Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. It is Monday. I hope you're all having a good start to the week and you had a cracking weekend, whatever you got up to, anywhere around the world where you're watching this video. We've got plenty to talk about today. We'll talk about Folarin Balogun, who scored his first international goal for the USA yesterday, got his hands on a trophy as well. We'll talk about Emile Smith Rowe, who's been speaking about his Arsenal future over the weekend while he's been away on international duty with England under 21s. We'll of course take some of your questions. There's questions on Declan Rice, on Ruben Neves and his move to Saudi Arabia, Kai Havertz as well. So plenty to get into today to start the week off. But we're going to start by talking about Thomas Partey, which is a really interesting debate going on at the moment in the world of Arsenal. Now, Thomas Partey could potentially be for sale this summer. And that raises a lot of questions, I think, about A, why Arsenal would be considering to sell this summer, and B, whether it would be a good idea. From a club perspective, when you look at it, you think, why would Arsenal... Is it a risk? Is it a big risk? But then from a club point of view, he's got 2 years left on his contract. You look at his age, you think, basically, if you're going to give him a new contract, then you're basically accepting you're never going to get any money for Thomas Partey. If you're going to sell, this is the summer to sell because his value would still be relatively high. He's still got 2 years left on his contract. He's not into, you wouldn't say he's an old player yet. And if there's interest there, from a club point of view, a business point of view, you look at it and think maybe it is the right time. From a team point of view, though, and this is where I get a little bit worried when I look at it, is it's a big risk. It feels like a big risk. Now, Thomas Partey did not finish the season very well last season. We know that. I personally think, and I don't know, it was never confirmed, it was never announced, but I think there was clearly some sort of fitness stroke injury issue going on with Thomas Partey over the final weeks of the season. You think back to that final international break. He went away with Ghana. An Arsenal physio went with him. He didn't even play the second game because he picked up an injury. He came back and he was just not the same player. And he really struggled. The game at Manchester City, the Etihad, it just looked like watching him that he was at 50% fitness. He couldn't run. It was blatantly obvious. It just felt like something was going on. And then he lost his place in the team, deservedly so. Jorginho came in and played very well, and he kept his place in central midfield through to the end of the season. So it wasn't a good end to the season for Partey. But for 2/3 of the season, even more than 2/3 of the season, he was absolutely exceptional. He was one of the best midfielders in the Premier League, and he was crucial to Arsenal having such a good season. So I don't think that should be forgotten just because he played poorly for the last 6-7 games of the season. And I just think in a summer when you're going to lose Granit Xhaka, or you're probably going to lose Granit Xhaka, look, it hasn't happened yet. The deal hasn't gone through yet. I'm still expecting it to go through when it comes to Granit Xhaka. So you're losing one huge presence in your midfield there. And then if you decide to sell Thomas Partey in the same summer, that's 2 of your starting 3 central midfielders you are selling in the same summer when you're going into Champions League football for the first time since 2017. Just feels like a really, really big risk. Yes, Arsenal are going to improve the squad. Yes, they're going to bring midfielders in. Declan Rice, we'll wait and see what happens. Clearly, the priority would come in immediately improve that midfield. Whether Arsenal then try and get something done for Caicedo, whether they move for a Lavia or someone like that. Whatever, we don't know yet, but they're going to go. It's not just one midfielder going to come in. It's going to be 2 midfielders comes in. Even if that happens, it still feels like it would be a major, major risk to lose Granit Xhaka and Thomas Partey in the same summer. Yes, Jorginho's there. Yes, Mohamed El-Nenny's still there if he's fit for the start of the season. But is that strong? Even with 2 additions, is that strong enough to go into another Premier League season with Champions League on top of that? It just doesn't feel to me like it is. And it just feels like too big a risk. Sometimes you have to think beyond the business decision, I would say, in terms of potentially bringing money in for a club, bringing money into the club. If you're going to sell Granit, I don't think you can sell Thomas Partey. Personally, that's my opinion. But it appears that might be something that Arsenal would consider should a decent offer arrive for Thomas Partey this summer. There's been whispers of Italian clubs being interested, or even Saudi Arabia clubs being interested. And we're going to talk about what's going on with some of the Saudi clubs a little bit later. So if a big bid did arrive, would that be enough to turn Arsenal's head? We'll have to wait and see. But I'd love to get your opinions on it, and you have been sending questions and comments in about it over the last few days, so I'd love to get more of that to see, sort of gauge the opinion of everyone on how they view this Partey situation at the moment. Do you sell? Do you keep? Let me know in the comments below. Another player whose future is up for debate at Arsenal at the moment is obviously Folarin Balogun. We know that. 2 years left on his contract. Doesn't appear like he's very willing to sign a new contract at this stage, or willing at all to sign a new contract at this stage. He wants to carry on playing. He wants to be guaranteed basically playing week in, week out now. He's had his big decision to take to move over to the United States. It's a decision which he marked with his first goal for his new country yesterday in his second appearance, scoring in the win against Mexico, which saw USA crowned CONCACAF Nation League champion. So he got his hands on a trophy as well. Really good finish by Balogun. Lovely little run off the shoulder of the last man, slipped in with a nice ball from Gio Reyna. Great finish, first time with his right foot from Balogun. You know, he showed strength, pace, finishing ability, everything we know that Balogun's got, everything that he showcased this season while he's been away on loan with Reims. He spoke after the game about his future over to the journalists in the United States. He said, "I'm not sure about the discussions that are going to take place this summer. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I'm just committed to now. I try to stay in the present. I obviously want to enjoy the moment with my team and my family. What I can say is I definitely won't go on loan again." And this is the problem for Arsenal. And I've spoken about it before, and people still keep saying it. Why are Arsenal considering selling Balogun? You know, in our ideal world, Arsenal would not be considering selling Folarin Balogun, but it's the situation they're in right now. He's only got 2 years left on his deal. He's a very, very ambitious young man. He wants to be playing week in, week out. He's just had a season over in France doing exactly that, and he's absolutely flourished because of it. And so if he comes back to Arsenal, he will want to do that. But he's not going to do that. He's not going to... I just don't see it. I don't see him knocking Gabriel Jesus out the side. So even if you decide, right, I'm going to sell Eddie Nketiah and I'm going to make Balogun the second choice striker, that doesn't feel like that's going to be enough to convince Balogun to stay or to sign a new contract, more importantly. Obviously, you can make him stay by saying, okay, you're going to stick around, we're not going to sell you. But then you do that, he's down to the final year of his contract next season, next summer, and then suddenly the chance to make big money on Balogun is gone. And I know I said in the last one when I was talking about Thomas Partey, sometimes you've got to weigh up a club decision over a team decision, but this one feels a little bit different. Balogun is hot right now. His value is sky high. He's got lots of clubs interested in him. He's not going to sign a new deal, or he's very, very unlikely to sign a new deal and commit himself to the club at the moment. It just feels like he has to go, and it's a difficult one, and I think it's one that you think, oh, you're going to regret that in the future. He's going to go and play really well, score lots of goals, and then it's going to be, oh, why do we sell? But I think sometimes there are really difficult decisions you have to make, and it's not just as simple as keep Balogun, sell Nketiah. It's just not. Eddie Nketiah's got a long-term contract. Balogun hasn't, and Balogun's not going to sign a new contract, or very unlikely to sign a new contract, and that puts Arsenal in a very difficult position, and that's why, unfortunately, it just feels like they're going to have to cash in when his value is high this summer. There's a chance, try and protect yourselves, get a buyback clause in it. That's what a lot of clubs do right now. It's what Chelsea do a lot of times with players that they're, talented players that they would rather not sell, but know they have to sell, is get a buyback clause in it. And so if you sell him now, he goes and flourishes and turns into this absolute superstar. You've got first refusal. You've got that buyback clause to try and bring him back to the club. That's the thing I think Arsenal are going to have to play with now when it comes to Balogun. It's not just as simple as keep him while he's considering selling him. It's not. You've got to think about the bigger picture, and that's why this summer it just feels like it's a move that is going to happen, unfortunately. Emile Smith Rowe, another player who, future was up for debate, but it very much seems like he's absolutely staying, and he's been talking about that, and he's been talking a little bit about the injury issues that he's had to be suffering since not just last season, but the last basically 3 years of his career. This is what he had to say about his future. He's talking to the Times while he's on international duty. He said, "Arsenal are my club and I'm not going to give up until Arteta says he doesn't want me, but that is not the case. He wants me as part of the team and I want to fight for my place and to get back in the team. I just want to be on the pitch. This was the hardest season of my career. It was tough, but we were in a title race and I understand the manager isn't going to change the team if we're winning every game. I just tried to stay positive and train as well as I could. The other players and Mikel were great with me. They kept me feeling connected, but it was a tough and long season. I won't lie. I'm not surprised. It must have been a really difficult season. Sort of looking in from the outside, you're injured for the first half of it, and then when you come back, hoping to make an impact over the second half of the season, you basically don't get an opportunity because the manager doesn't throw you in. I do think, and I've said it before, I think there was opportunities that Mikel could have used Smith Rowe more, could have made him feel more included in the team more. He didn't. He opted to leave him on the bench lots of times when he could have brought him on in the second half of games when Arsenal were in a decent position. He didn't. So I can understand it was a really difficult, tough season for Smith Rowe, but he's pain-free now. He's for the first time in a long, long time, and that's why I do think he's got a big part to play. Still, a lot of people, I see some of you in my comments saying, "Oh, get rid of him. He's not good enough. We need to be more ruthless." I get Arsenal need to be ruthless at times with some players, but he does not feel like a player you need to be ruthless on, because I think he's clearly such a talented player. He's shown that before when he's been in the first team, what he can do, and I think he can do that again. I absolutely do. He just needs to be given the opportunities to have more of an impact, and I think, fingers crossed, he will get that next season. If he didn't, I think Arsenal, they've shown in the past they will sell players if they need to. They've got to move him on if they need to, but they don't want to move him on, and that suggests to me that long term they do see a future, a part of this side involving Emile Smith Rowe. On the injury, obviously he had that groin problem which has been plaguing him since when he went to Leipzig and before even, and it really sort of exploded at the start of last season, that game against Man United at the start of the season when he didn't play. Well, came on as a substitute, but in this warm down, he had a shot and he just blew his groin out. Basically, he was out for a few months, had to have the operation, but now he's had that operation and he is injury free for the first time in a long time, and he sort of opens up here, gives a little bit of insight into that injury. He said, "I've had it since I was 19 years old. I've been managing it season after season, getting injections, taking tablets to not feel it. Last season I had an injection which would make me not feel the groin at all, even when I was kicking the ball. That was the only thing helping me get through games. But at the start of this season, I was still feeling it and I felt I just couldn't keep on having injections for the rest of my career. I got to United away, took a shot, off balance, tried to use all my power. I knew as soon as I'd done it that I'd torn something." This is a 20-year-old kid, 19-year-old kid having to have injections every single game just to get himself through it, an injection to basically numb the area so he didn't feel the pain. That is not great. And the fact that he still played so well when he was having that done and scored so many goals and made such an impact, shows how good a player he is. But it just got to a point last season where he couldn't continue. So the fact that they've now fixed that and he is injury free, I think great thing. And I really hope he has a really good summer this summer with England, and he can come back and make a really big impact with Arsenal, because I think a lot of people are forgetting how good Emile Smith Rowe is and how good he was when he came into the side and the impact that he made. I think when you don't watch a player week in, week out, when he sort of goes off the radar a little bit, you forget about how good a player he is. I think he's a hell of a talent, and I'm really looking forward, fingers crossed, to him making a big impact next season. Okay, on to a few of your questions before I call time on this one. Thank you very much, as always, for getting involved. And please do, at the end of this video, if you want anything for me to talk about over the next couple of days, let me know in the comments below. Leave me a question. I'll go through some of them and select them when I can. Ian is first up. He says, "Why do you think we struggle so much to sell players? Kai Havertz didn't really play well last season and Chelsea is still looking for a healthy price tag for him. But on the contrary, we probably ain't going to get a penny for Pepe, who performed okay in his first 2 seasons. It seems like we don't know when to pull the trigger in terms of player sales." Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's a big issue. It's an issue Arsenal have to get better. I think it's a big question mark over Edu that he needs to show this summer, because some of the players who are available, previously before they were too old, they're on massive contracts. It was difficult to sell them. Arsenal in a difficult position. This summer, there's more players who are available who Arsenal are willing to sell, who they should get more money for. Kieran Tierney's a prime example of that. Folarin Balogun's another one. Arsenal have to get good deals in, good money for the club. I agree on Pepe. I don't think Arteta has helped himself help the club in some ways with his treatment of players. When he doesn't like a player, when he doesn't fancy them, he freezes them out pretty much. He makes it very, very obvious that they're not that wanted, and when a potential buying club sees that, they're like, well, they just want to get them off the books, don't they? So let's just wait and see. Let's just offer a loan, try and get him on loan. Ainsley Maitland-Niles, for example, we think about a few years ago, he was playing well, he was in the team, Wolves wanted him, they bid about 20 million for him, Arsenal rejected it at the time, Arteta didn't want to sell him, but then within 6 months he'd gone out on loan to West Brom and his value's just gone straight down because Arteta decided he didn't actually want to use him, didn't play him in his position. I mean, Ainsley didn't help himself at times by wanting to play in midfield more. When he was in the team, he was playing as a wing back, but even so, suddenly he was out of the team, not getting a look in, and you just turned down 20 million for a pound for a player. And then you're not using him at all, and his value just goes and he becomes harder and harder to sell. And I think, Arteta's done that before. You look at Guendouzi, slightly different situation because of everything that went on behind the scenes, but still, it's just... I think there's a lot of factors, and I don't think Arteta has helped himself at times. I think the wages Arsenal got some of these players is not helping. I think Pepe's a prime example of that. I think he probably would have a lot of takers, Pepe, because he's still a good player, but he's on such big wages that if you're not selling to a Premier League club, then it's very, very hard to sell. And unfortunately, a Premier League club doesn't want Nicolas Pepe. You talk about Kai Havertz there, but a Premier League club wants Kai Havertz, and that makes it easier to sell because they can take on his wages. If you can't sell to Pepe to a Premier League club, there's barely anyone who can take on his wages, and that makes it so difficult. But thank you very much for your question. Ian now says... that was Ian. That was Ian's question, wasn't it? Joe says here, this is quite a long one, so apologies, I'm going to sort of rattle through that. It says, some people are forgetting, especially when talking about Havertz, is it because we played a specific formation last year, it doesn't mean we'll play exactly the same again. The players Arsenal are looking at might fit into a more modified system, perhaps closer to Arteta's preferred style. He then goes on to use Granit Xhaka as an example of that. So he says it's entirely possible that Arteta could try to play a more advanced central midfielder in combination with a more dynamic defensive midfielder, Rice, for example. You're absolutely right, 100%. We don't know exactly what Arteta's thinking. Each sort of season on season, he has modified this system that he's been using more and more. He's moved away from initially from the wing backs and then to more of a 4-2-3-1. Now it's into the 4-3-3 more. Maybe he does see a little bit of a different tweak to the system this coming forward this season, and that's what he's looking at Havertz to play a specific role. So you're absolutely right. I think we are in danger of always looking at that and thinking, right, Arsenal are rigid 4-3-3 now. That's what he's going to go with. If one player's coming in and he has to play Granit Xhaka's role, and I'm just as bad as doing that as well. So yeah, I think it's a really good comment, Joe. Really good insight there, and you're absolutely right. Maybe we'll have to wait and see. Basically, we won't know until the season started exactly how Arteta wants to use these players if he signs and what system he wants to use them in. Finally, quickly, let's talk about this one, which is an interesting one at the moment. It's from Lilem Bomvu. Apologies if I've got that completely wrong. He said, what do you think about Neves' move to Saudi? Do you see more players in the coming years at his age making those moves for financial gains, perhaps? It's an interesting one. We talked about Neves yesterday, didn't we? Someone asked if he was still a target for Arsenal, and I said no. And then, lo and behold, on that day, he goes and ends up moving to Saudi Arabia for about 47 million or whatever it is. It's an interesting development in terms of what's going on at football right now. We're looking at what's happened with Chelsea. The money they look like they're probably about to bring in just at the right time for them with these sales to Saudi for a few of their unwanted players. There's some fine lines there, very perhaps murky lines there in terms of PIF, who have sort of taken state control of the top four clubs in Saudi, having some sort of financial interest in the company that sort of is invested in Chelsea, and now Chelsea are managing to offload a lot of unwanted players for big money over there just at the time that they're needing to move around FFP. It's just a murky situation perhaps, but it is something I'm sure we're going to see. I mean, the Saudis, we know they're very, very serious. They want to make the league look better. They're spending a lot of money on wages so far to bring players in, but this is the first real big sort of financial fee we've seen invested in a player from the Premier League in Ruben Neves. I think you look at most of the players who have done it before have been aging players towards the end of the career. Neves isn't that, but I think potentially you sort of look at what happened with the Chinese Super League and players like Carrasco, for example. He went over there, had a couple of years there, earned an absolute fortune, came back to Europe, and has had a very good successful time at Atletico Madrid since then. Maybe that's what Neves is thinking. Go over there for a couple of years, make an absolute fortune, set yourself and your family up for complete life, and then come back at 28 and you've still got a good few years left in European football. So maybe that is what we're going to see, and it's going to be they're going to make a big, big impact on the football world. It's just, you look at it, you look at the finances there that is available to them, and it feels inevitable that it's going to be a big, big shake-up, and we could see more players going over there at a younger age, and we'll just have to wait and see how it develops. But it's certainly making waves in the football world, shall we say. So thank you very much for your question on that. And finally, Mr. Kingdom says, Charles, why does it take so long for Arsenal to make a second bid for Declan Rice? Well, I think that Arsenal are in talks with West Ham over Declan Rice. They're trying to come to successful conclusion to those talks. I think the first bid obviously didn't meet with West Ham's demands. I would say that Arsenal now, before this second bid goes in, I thought it would have gone in by now. I have to admit it hasn't. I would suggest that the reason for that is Arsenal and West Ham are trying to make sure that both clubs are much closer to a sort of number before that second bid goes in, to avoid any more disruption or further disruption. Obviously Declan Rice is away at the moment as well, which doesn't exactly help. If you get a deal done, you can't, and he's not here to sort of get it over the line. So I think there's a few factors, but I would suggest that the main thing is that Arsenal, before this second bid goes in, want to be more aware, or be a lot more certain about exactly what West Ham want and whether this bid will be very, very close to getting it done. So I would say that's the reason why. But thank you very much for your question, for your comments. This one's gone on a little bit. We've gone over 20 minutes today, so apologies for that. But thank you very much for watching. Appreciate your time. If you get involved, as always, have a very good day. Enjoy your Monday, wherever you're watching this around the world. I'll be back tomorrow to talk all things Arsenal as usual. Thanks for watching, everyone. Speak to you soon.